I clock out at exactly 11:47 p.m. It's been a grueling shift at the diner, and all I want is my bed. The parking lot is dimly lit, and the lampposts are casting long shadows that seem to creep along the asphalt. I dig through my purse for my keys, the usual post-work routine, when a chill sweeps through the air, a shiver that doesn't belong to the autumn night. As I approach my car, I notice something off to the side, near the dumpster that always smells like old fry oil. It's probably just a trash bag, I tell myself, but as I get closer, the shape becomes clearer, too structured to be garbage. My heart kicks up a notch. It's a person. I freeze, keys in hand, staring at the figure crumpled on the ground. "Hey," I call out, my voice shaky. "Are you okay?" No response. I inch closer, my phone ready to dial 911. The streetlights flicker, and in that brief moment of darkness, my mind races with every horror movie I've ever seen. When the light steadies, I'm close enough to see. It's a man, his eyes open, staring at nothing. Panic sets in. I fumble with my phone, dialing the emergency number as I back away. The operator picks up, and I blurt out my location, my voice cracking with each word. "There's a man here. He's not moving. I think he's dead." The wait for the police feels like a lifetime. I stand there, rooted to the spot, unable to take my eyes off of him. What happened to him? Was someone else still around? The thoughts whirl through my mind as the distant sirens finally grow louder. When the police arrive, I'm a bundle of nerves. They take over, and one of the officers stays with me as they secure the scene. "Did you see anyone else around when you found him?" the officer asked. I shake my head, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. No, just him, just like that. It turns out he was a local, known around the area, and no one could make sense of what happened. As I drive home, the image of his lifeless eyes haunt me. I keep glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something else that shouldn't be there. That night, I don't sleep. Every sound is a footstep, every shadow a threat. I had just finished my shift, and the parking lot was almost empty. The sun had set, and the last traces of daylight were fading fast. I walked quickly, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I always parked under the flickering street lamp, thinking it was safer. Tonight, the flicker seemed more like a warning. As I approached my car, I noticed something unusual. There was a shape on the ground, partially hidden by the shadows cast by the lamp. My heart started pounding harder, and a cold sweat broke out over my forehead. I thought it might be a pile of clothes, or maybe some trash, but something about it seemed off. I got closer, and the smell hit me. It was a sickly sweet odor, like something rotting. I felt my stomach churn, and I had to cover my nose with my sleeve. I told myself to keep moving, get to the car, and go home. But curiosity and dread pulled me towards the shape. When I was a few steps away, I could see it clearly. It was a body, a woman's body, lying face down. Her hair was matted with something dark, and her clothes were torn. Panic gripped me, and I wanted to scream, but my throat felt tight. I looked around, hoping someone else would be there, anyone, but I was alone. I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to run to my car, lock the doors, and call the police. But my legs wouldn't move. It was like they were glued to the spot. I could feel my pulse in my ears, loud and fast. I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to think clearly. Slowly, I reached into my pocket for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped it. I dialed 911, but before I could hit call, I heard a noise behind me. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. It was a soft rustling, like someone shifting in the shadows. I spun around, my phone clenched in my hand like a weapon. Nothing, just the empty lot and the distant hum of traffic. I turned back to the body, and that's when I noticed something even more terrifying. There was a faint, almost imperceptible movement. The body wasn't entirely still. I squinted, leaning in closer, trying to see if it was my imagination playing tricks on me. Then I saw it. Her fingers twitched, just a little but enough to send a jolt of fear through me. She was alive, barely, but alive. I had to do something. I couldn't just leave her there. I forced myself to step closer, my heart hammering in my chest. I crouched down, reaching out with a trembling hand. Her skin was cold and clammy, and I could feel the stickiness of blood. I needed to keep her conscious, somehow. I needed help. I tried dialing 911 again, but my phone slipped from my grasp and slid across the pavement. Cursing under my breath, I scrambled after it, my fingers scraping against the rough concrete. I finally grabbed it and managed to call for help. As I waited for the operator to answer, I kept glancing around, feeling like someone was watching me. The minutes stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. When the operator finally picked up, I could barely get the words out. I told them where I was, that there was a woman, a body, and she was hurt, maybe dying. They assured me help was on the way, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound made me jump. It felt like I was in a nightmare, one where I couldn't wake up. I stayed by her side, trying to keep her breathing, trying to keep myself from falling apart. The sirens in the distance were the only thing that kept me grounded, reminding me that help was coming, that this would end. But the wait was excruciating. Each second felt like a lifetime. When the paramedics finally arrived, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. They took over, and I stumbled back, collapsing against my car. I watched as they worked, their faces grim but focused. I couldn't hear what they were saying. Everything felt muffled, distant. They loaded her onto the stretcher, and I watched them wheel her away, the flashing lights casting eerie shadows across the lot. I stayed there, leaning against my car, trying to process what had just happened. The smell still lingered in the air, and I could feel it clinging to my clothes, to my skin. I knew I had to talk to the police, explain what I saw, what I did, but all I could think about was how close I had come to something horrible, something that would haunt me for a long time. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and walked towards the flashing lights, ready to tell my story, ready to face whatever came next. It was nearly midnight when I finally punched out. The fluorescent lights of the hospital had long since ceased to offer any comfort. They just added to the sterile, unnerving atmosphere. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the grit and exhaustion of a 14-hour shift as I walked towards the parking garage. The hospital's parking structure was dimly lit, an echoing cavern at this hour. My footsteps were the only sound, bouncing off the cold, concrete walls. I hated this part of the night, when the world seemed to contract into a few narrow paths of light and shadow. As I reached the second level, I noticed a car parked awkwardly near the exit ramp. Its front was almost touching the wall, headlights dimming slowly. My heartbeat quickened, a creeping sense of dread slipping in uninvited. I tightened my grip on my bag and walked faster, telling myself it was just a tired driver who needed a nap. But as I passed the car, something caught my eye, something that froze me in place. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, and I could see a pale hand hanging limply outside. My breath hitched. For a moment, I thought about just leaving, about getting in my own car and driving away. But I was a nurse. It wasn't in my nature to ignore someone who might need help. I approached cautiously, every instinct screaming at me to run. My shoes made soft scuffs against the concrete, the only sound in the otherwise silent garage. The hand didn't move. I swallowed hard, then leaned forward to peer into the car. Inside, a man was slumped over the wheel. His face was turned towards me, eyes open but lifeless. There was a dark, wet stain spreading across his chest. My stomach turned. I knew death when I saw it, and this man was undeniably dead. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. As I waited for the operator, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the body. The man's face was twisted in an expression of terror, as if his last moments had been filled with unimaginable horror. The operator's voice broke through my haze of fear, and I quickly explained what I had found. After hanging up, I backed away from the car, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I turned and started towards my own car, but something made me stop. There was a faint, almost imperceivable movement in the shadows behind the car. I strained my eyes, trying to see what it was, but the darkness was too thick. The distant sound of sirens finally broke the silence, and I felt a wave of relief. Help was on the way. But as I waited, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept my back to the wall, eyes darting around, every nerve on edge. When the police arrived, I gave them my statement, trying to explain what I had found. They took my details, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. They didn't see the terror in the man's final expression. As I drove home, I couldn't stop glancing in the rearview mirror. Every dark patch in the road seemed to hold potential danger. By the time I reached my apartment, I was trembling with fear I couldn't fully understand. I double-locked my door and checked all the windows before finally collapsing onto my bed. Sleep came fitfully, filled with nightmares of unseen pursuers and lifeless eyes. I woke with a start, heart racing, every creak of my apartment magnified in the silence. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The shadows seemed darker, the nights longer. I tried to go about my routine, but the memory of that night lingered, a dark stain in my mind. I knew I had to stay vigilant, to trust my instincts, because in the back of my mind, I couldn't forget the man's final expression, and I couldn't help but feel that whatever had come for him was still out there, waiting.